Being autistic, I think more than any other group of people, we understand what it's like to enter a space with the expectation of one experience and getting something entirely different.
Yet, I think there's a core issue that we have to constantly contend with, which is that everyone is trying to regulate us. And moms, in particular, because I'm just going to talk about being a mom and my point of view, is I feel like everyone's trying to regulate me. It's really, really important to stay calm, don't lose your mind, be reasonable, and sometimes that's really hard.
When you talk about, being a parent and needing to be prepared for everything, no matter what, you can't be prepared for everything. There's going to be things that are going to come your way that you're not going to be prepared for. That being said, no parent is perfect. They try, and, being a parent is one of the hardest jobs.
As you have adjusted to your children's needs, your needs have changed. And I found that really interesting. And it made me start to think about advocacy through an entirely new lens. I had never really considered before. For me, there were really two categories of parents: non-autistic parents and autistic parents. I had never really considered the fact that there is an in-between.
I wasn't diagnosed with autism until my son was. So I am actually not just a person on the spectrum, but a parent of a child on the spectrum who is now 17. I also have a neurotypical child who's 19 and in college. I am a single parent, so I've raised these kids on my own since my daughter was 6. And I have been an educator for 25 years, teaching kids also on the spectrum and a myriad of other disabilities such as ADHD and so on and so forth. So my perspective then becomes a little bit unique because I don't really fit squarely into any group. I don't fit squarely into the self-advocacy group. I don't fit squarely into the parent of a child with autism group. And a lot of the support for people on the spectrum is for people much younger than me. I'm 41. What nobody tells us at the beginning of this path as parents is that there is no path. There's no way to know ahead of time what's going to happen and how to prepare for it, because kids are going to be their own.
Because most of us who are parents, we have automatic thoughts. We have an idea of when things are supposed to happen in a child's life, and we have an idea of what a child can be capable of at certain ages. And we start to spin a little bit. At least, I shouldn't say we, me, okay? Me. My head started to spin.
So we have these expectations, and then what happens is that when you get the diagnosis, you immediately throw all of those expectations out the window, and you're given therapy and you're given steps based on deficits. And so it's scary and it's frightening. Nobody says, oh, your kid's not going to be able to talk until maybe 5, but they're going to be masters at this or that or the other. There's none of that. There's no positive piece of information that comes after that. So everything's delivered in negative tones. And then you start looking it up and you see how much it's going to cost and how many steps there's going to be and all these things that you didn't plan for. You plan for what you can, but you can't plan for everything that a disability hands out. And I understand this, especially as somebody who has been in both camps, person with a disability and the parent with a person with disability. There have been some surprises.
So many parents are, they'll say to me, you're not like my child. You are articulate. You're able to communicate. But even in this video, I'm sure most of you can see the deficits that I have with that. Doing this isn't easy, but I was given the resources to be able to do it. When you have the resources, it's much easier.
We get judged too harshly, and our parents feel a need to keep us inside our house and are scared to take us out in public because they're scared of a meltdown or they're scared of some sort of thing going wrong in public. And they shouldn't have to be. Like, the society needs to learn how to be more accepting, not us having to learn to be more normal with society.
So the first thing I'm going to say is to bridge the divide is that if you're not a parent and you're a person on the spectrum, you need to yield. Okay? You need to take a minute to go, okay, I know what it's like to be the kid in this situation. I don't know what it's like to be the parent in that situation. And you need to take a deep breath and listen. We don't always expect you to have the answers. We don't always expect your answers to agree with what parents want or should do. We want to hear your opinion. We want to hear your perspective, but it's not always the evil parent. Sometimes parents are just lost, confused, sad, for a myriad of reasons. It's not because of autism, but because of all the other societal expectations that are built around that. Okay? We go through this as women. We go through this as people of color. There are societal expectations that make life difficult simply because of your circumstances of birth. You can't ignore that reality. Okay? So acknowledge that that's there, take a deep breath, and allow those emotions to flow.
Because while my son has autism, I don't have autism. And when I am in the world, I can read the signals that other people send me. I can read that stink eye look. I can read that, clearly you're not doing this right, Mom. Look. I can hear it in my friends. I can hear it in my family. I can see that I'm being judged, and it drives me mental because I'm trying as hard as I can. And so we can get lost. I can get lost in my head spinning because I have trouble with self-regulation. And if I don't stay regulated, then help will not come my way. People will push me away. People will leave me and my kid behind. And when you're a neurotypical person, you know this to be true. That's really a hard thing to accept. So we put a lot of pressure on our children to try to get with it. And that can really backfire on us. And I don't blame anybody on the autism spectrum for wondering why their parents are so crazy.
The second thing I'm going to tell you as a parent, okay, it does get better. I'm 41 years old living with this condition. I didn't even have any support or help until I was in my 20s. My son being diagnosed at 3 meant I was diagnosed at 26. I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to figure out. I didn't even realize that this was a possibility. I found out I was dyslexic. You imagine going all through school. Why do you think I wear these guys here? Because schools thought I couldn't see. I understand what it's like to be at a loss and to be constantly 15 steps behind everybody else while you try to figure out what's going on with life, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do as parents is that when you're listening to self-advocates, realize that they've been stung too. They've been stung by the same society that's stinging you. You guys are being hurt by the same common thread. It's just being manifested different in your lives.
I don't think any self-advocates have ever claimed that being autistic, much less raising an autistic child, was ever easy. I do think that we forget, though, about what that means. We say, we need autism acceptance and all of this, but I think we need to be working more together to actually make sure that we're providing the resources that parents need so that we don't end up in these huge fights about ideology and intersectionality, all of these things.
As parents, you're feeling hopeless and helpless. But as a person on the spectrum, you're feeling lifeless, unaccepted. And that's very difficult. So the thing that I believe that we can do with a group like OAC and similar groups like it is that we do have to have this open dialogue, but it has to be less you should, and it should be more, this is how I feel about this situation from my perspective. We need to take that information and realize that we are not enemies of each other, but two people trying to learn how to work through this whole thing together. And as parents, you have to realize, and I cannot stress this enough, there are other people on this planet that are capable of loving your children as much as you. And we have to find those people, and you have to include them into your community and allow them to be around for those kids that are going to need the extra support going through life, that may not be able to be totally independent or live on their own. Accept those helps, accept that bridge in society.